Sweating is actually a mechanism that's called a negative feedback loop. Throwing up from physical exertion is not a sign of a lack of physical fitness. What's going on, everybody? Hey, it's Hopper. We got Brutus. We're coming back at you with another video. This video today is titled Training Myths and Misconceptions. We will cover several topics today, so grab your popcorn, sit down, strap yourself in, we'll get started. Okay, so the first training misconception that we will discuss is sweating. And this one's one of my favorites. Sweating is a huge misconception. We will often hear the phrase, oh, this person was in such good shape that she worked out for, an hour and a half, or this person ran up all these stairs and hiked for 3 hours and they didn't even break a sweat. And that is completely false. And conversely, we will also hear if someone starts to sweat rapidly, sometimes people will say, oh my gosh, why are you sweating so much? I thought you were in shape. Why are you sweating so profusely? Your shirt is covered. We thought you worked out a lot. We thought you were in shape. Sweating is actually a mechanism that's called a negative feedback loop that is designed to regulate.
Regulators! Mount up!
This regulation will occur to keep a cell or a system or an organism at a certain temperature or at a certain value. And what happens is, with respect to actual sweating comes from the anterior portion of the hypothalamus. And here's a great diagram right here. And we also have sensory receptors in our skin. And so while we start to work out and we generate movement, we have a graph right here that I actually discussed in my previous video for a stretch reflex of a tissue while we generate movement, where you have your displacement and your force output. And then we have the stretch reflex right here. And as I mentioned, in between right here is where thermal heat is created, because we don't get this entire force return back. So these X's right here will generate that thermal heat. That thermal heat will be sensed by the receptors in the skin and communicated back towards the anterior part of that hypothalamus. And therefore that will start the regulation process and the sweating will start to occur. So if someone sweats at a faster rate, they sweat more profusely, their cooling system is much more efficient. And that's actually, that's a good thing. So this idea of sweating, where someone may not sweat for however many minutes and someone says, oh, you worked out this hard and you didn't even sweat, that is completely false. The more an individual works out, the more sensitive their body becomes to the change in body temperature and the thermal heat that they generate from the muscle contractions, the faster their body will start to cool itself off. So there's a negative correlation between the level of fitness that someone has and the time that it takes for the person to initiate their sweating. So the more physically fit a person gets, you'll go up a flight of stairs, or you'll start to vacuum, or you'll start to clean, or do some of the most simple tasks, go to the grocery store. And if you start to feel as if you're sweating and you think, my God, what the hell is going on? No, that's just the fact that your body is sensing the change in heat much faster than a person that doesn't exercise regularly. A great example would be if you went out to go salsa dancing, where you're operating at 30 to 40% versus 70 or 80% in a workout, and your body doesn't know what you're actually doing. The actin and myosin fibers in our tissues, all they know are muscle contractions. They don't know that you're vacuuming, or if you're carrying a bag of groceries, or if you're salsa dancing. It's just muscle contractions. Those muscle contractions they will generate that thermal heat, send that information up to the anterior part of the hypothalamus, and start to initiate that sweat sequence. So if someone sweats easily, they're typically way more accustomed to exercise and the change in body temperature that they will experience. So does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, next topic, throwing up. Bruce, I tell you what, man, you're killing me. Especially with respect to exercise. This is another one of my favorites. And I have a lot of favorites, kind of like Brutus. Brutus is one of my favorites. Throwing up from physical exertion is not a sign of a lack of physical fitness.
And that was the first time ever in my career as a pugilistic combatant I threw up.
Whatsoever. All it is, it's a sign that someone did not time their food intake or their diet appropriately to when they were going to train. So a great diagram of what the stomach looks like is right here. So if an individual eats 3 hours before a workout, that's arguably enough time for all the food to completely digest and to be absorbed into the small intestine, which of course will take a fair amount of blood to the stomach. However, if someone were to consume too much food, too soon before a workout, especially if the workout is vigorous and at high intensities, all of a sudden we have a struggle of where the blood will go in the body. So we have the feed and breathe section, and then of course we have the blood that needs to go to the extremities. So if we place a stimulus on our bodies, such as physical fitness, and we train and we work out, we're running on the treadmill or we're squatting, the blood will want to remove itself from the feed and breathe section and move out to our extremities to deliver oxygen to the respiring tissues. And if we ate too soon before the workout, the body either says, hey, I need to digest and absorb this food, which will require a fair amount of blood flow, or I need to meet the demand that this exercise is placing on my body and send oxygen to those respiring tissues. And one of two things will happen. If a person exercises too vigorously and they eat too close to that workout, they will either stop the exercise or their body will regurgitate that food. Because why would the blood want to stay in the stomach when you're placing a demand on the tissues for oxygen? And now there's this fight between the rest and digest portion of your body versus the sympathetic portion of your body, which needs that blood. And we also need to understand that physical fitness is a relative term. If someone runs a mile in 7 minutes, that could be a personal best for them, or for someone else, that could be a recovery day.
Lloyd, what are you doing?
It feels like you're running at an incredible rate, Harry.
So to say someone is out of shape because they threw up is nonsensical, and it's also completely relative. And throwing up because physical activity was so demanding is not, for lack of a better phrase, it's not a bad thing. It's just your body's way of trying to get more oxygen to the tissues and get rid of the blood flow that's going to the stomach and get that blood to those respiring muscles. And I recall watching this episode, and everyone thinks it's such a bad thing when Shoney Carter threw up. It's like, no, you just mistimed your food.
Why are you crying?
I told you we put it in too early.
Now, a dry heave is similar. Sometimes after someone works out at a high intensity and they go and throw up and they don't throw anything up, that is also your body's way to say, hey, let's get some more blood flow to those tissues and let's throw up just in case there's any extra food back in that stomach. So if you dry heave and still don't throw anything up, that's just another mechanism to try to meet the demands of the exercise that you place onto your body. So you'll see, kids throw up at basketball games or wrestling matches, and people get all worried. Provided there's no actual sickness or illness, a majority of the time it's just the mistiming of the food, and it's the body trying to meet the demands of the exercise that was placed on the body. So that's it for this video on myths and misconceptions. For those of you that have any questions, please feel free to contact me. My contact information is in the description box below. For those of you that appreciate this content and wish to support this channel, there are links in the description below to send donations. At the very least, please like this video and subscribe, as well as share this information. And we'll see you all next time.